And staying on with Trump's tariffs, let's shift our focus to the impact on India. In a move that he termed Liberation Day, Trump declared a 27% tariff on Indian imports, citing what he called a discounted reciprocal approach. US President Trump explained that this new tariff rate was calculated based on the cumulative tariffs and non-monetary barriers imposed by other nations on US products. He specifically stated that India levies a 52% tariff on US imports, thus justifying the 27% reciprocal tariff. While announcing tariffs on Indian goods, Trump also talked about his relationship with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Trump called Prime Minister Modi a great friend.
India, very, very tough, very, very tough. The Prime Minister just left, and he's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. They charge us 52%. You have to understand, we charge them almost nothing for years and years and decades.
So we pronounce.
The administration has, however, exempted pharmaceutical exports from the tariff, bringing cheer to India's pharma industry. The US accounted for nearly a third of India's pharmaceutical exports, mainly cheaper versions of popular drugs, with sales of about $9 billion last fiscal year. Following Trump's tariff announcement, the economic relationship between the United States and India has taken a significant turn. But some experts believe that there are potential upsides for India as well. Now let's break down the situation. The key point here is the comparative advantage. While the 27% tariff is significant, it's crucial to consider how it compares to tariffs on India's competitors. Now, the US will implement a 10% base tariff on all countries starting from the 5th of April, with the additional 17% for India kicking in on the 9th of April, totaling 27%. However, this 27% is lower than the tariffs imposed on major competitors like China, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Thailand, and Indonesia. While some developed nations like Japan and the EU have lower tariffs, they don't directly compete with India in many key sectors in terms of exports to the US. Now, this differential could give India a competitive edge, particularly in sectors like textiles and garments, similar to the advantage that Bangladesh once held in the EU. Now, the second potential advantage is the opportunity for negotiation. The Trump administration has indicated that these tariffs could be revised if trade concerns are addressed. India and the US are already negotiating a trade deal, with the first phase targeted for completion by October. Now, this provides a platform for India to mitigate the tariffs' impact. Furthermore, a recent US report highlighted India's relatively high existing tariff rates. Now, in this context, the 27% tariff might be seen as less severe outcome. Finally, the reaction from other trade partners will be crucial. Countries with traditionally lower tariffs might retaliate, leading to a trade war. However, given India's relatively lower tariff compared to its competitors, a strong retaliatory response is less likely. Now, this allows India to focus on securing concessions through negotiations. It remains to be seen what India's approach would be in response to Trump's tariff in the upcoming days. Now, for more on this, we have with us Mitali Nikor, the founder of Nikor Associate and economist, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you for being with us, Mitali.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Now, what specific sectors of India's economy will be most affected by Trump's tariffs, and how will India adapt to the changes?
So I think there are definitely winners and losers that have been created by today's tariff announcements. I wouldn't classify India as a complete loser in today's tariff announcements. I would say there are some sort of silver linings, as you rightly pointed out. I mean, the first thing is that when we look at, the basket of commodities that India is currently exporting to the US, the two or three sectors that are most likely to be hit are electronics, semiconductors, high tech equipment, which is not a very large basket for India at the moment, but it wants these commodities to grow much faster. So I think this is a very important area, especially high tech equipment and electronics, where India might want to negotiate further with the US. On the other hand, there are commodities like textiles, there are commodities like engineering goods, and then there are commodities like agricultural and food processing, goods as well, where it will be harder to negotiate because it is harder for India to give concessions, especially in agriculture and food processing, because that hits the poorest of the poor. So I do feel going forward, it's really going to be a sector by sector kind of approach and trying to understand which value chains to prioritize when it comes to US exports.
Right. And Mitali, do Trump's tariff policies lead to long-term shifts in India's trade strategy, such as diversifying export markets or even strengthening domestic manufacturing?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest testaments of this is the fact that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi is currently sitting in Bangkok as part of the BIMSTEC summit. Because you can already see that it is within the interest of the government of India, it is within the interest of the administration to start looking at how can we strengthen regional value chains. And for a very long time, we've been advocating also with the Ministry of Commerce and the trade ministries to say, looking at trading with your neighbors, look at trade with the regional players within Asia Pacific. It's very critical. Even the EU delegation was actually in India
Yes.
just about 2 weeks ago, and the EU delegation has been negotiating more concessions with India and has been looking at how EU based products can be sold more in the Indian market. So even the Indian market and the strength of the Indian economy today provides India with an important bargaining chip, if you will, in international trade negotiations to say you can have access to our markets as long as we are able to, export more goods to your countries. So I think, there's a lot of opportunities for India that are opened up with this tariff regime.
Right. And how do these tariffs influence India-US diplomatic relations, especially concerning these trade negotiations that'll be coming up and the broader strategic partnerships?
So I think, it's very interesting because it almost feels like the relationship between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump is a sort of separate dynamic which is going on its own path, and it's almost something which has been characterized even by both leaders as let's leave our friendship aside. We are friends, but so I do think that there's a very interesting dynamic between the two leaders there. But when you look at the economic issues and when you look at the national issues that are impacting both countries, it is common sense for both countries to work more closely together. India can provide the US with the very necessary skilled workforce, for example, to aid its AI transition. India themselves, I mean, we ourselves need to upskill ourselves in our IT industry, for example, to be able to weather the storm that artificial intelligence is going to bring, and upskill our engineers. It's very critical. And then on top of that, when it comes to space exploration, when it comes to electronics, when it comes to high technology, I mean, these are areas in which India can be a natural partner for the United States. So I do feel that once this tariff discussion is sort of to one side, it is important for India and the US to continue looking at the North Star of increasing trade between the two countries to $500 billion by 2030.
Right. Mitali, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost.
Thank you.
Greeting you with aloha and namaste.
I love India.
Presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India. What we saw in Kashmir.
How do you see Trump's America?
Yes, the current administration behaves differently from the previous administration.
Are you saying that there are foreign powers who are trying to bring down the current government in Syria?
Exactly.
Bluntly, Iran, maybe Russia too.
Prime Minister Modi committed to South-South, cooperation.
Not over 50%.
Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.